Maybe you wake up happy every morning and put your head on the pillow at the end of the day feeling fulfilled, pleasantly tired, and immediately fall into a blissful rest, readying yourself for the next day of joy. Perhaps you never have a disagreement with a friend or colleague, never experienced stress in a long queue, and have never minded the end of a relationship or the loss of a job. Maybe you're the kind of person who sees every glass as not just half full, but overflowing. In which case, congratulations, you probably don't need to read this book. But for the rest of us, life can sometimes feel like it's just one thing after another. From the tiny complaints, a missed bus, a car out of petrol, a friend canceling on you, an extra meeting when you'd cleared your calendar, to the big challenges of life, separation, unemployment, death. Life in the 21st century is an endless list of emotional, financial, mental, and life tasks, all buried under the pressures and pulls of social media and an endlessly connected internet society. We don't earn enough, we don't eat right, we don't look or dress how we should, we don't have enough friends, and if we do, we aren't doing the right things with them. Our homes should be better, our jobs should be better, we should be monetizing our hobbies and performing self-care at all times, and we should be engaging in every bit of news so we can be informed and prepared for everything that might happen. It's exhausting. With the current pace and stresses of the world, it doesn't seem like learning to not care about a missed bus could make that much of a difference. There are such big issues in the world. Why does it matter if you can shrug off someone pushing in ahead of you at the supermarket? But the strange truth is that those tiny little releases do make a difference. Our lives are made up of moments. Right now, your current moment is sitting here, reading these words. Other tiny moments make you feel better or worse, and enough negative moments on the wrong kind of day can make you feel that the whole day has been ruined, or whole month, whole year. On the wrong kind of day, after a few tiny bad events on previous days, it can feel like this entire thing is just too much. But imagine living a life where those tiny things don't get to you, and where you build up such good habits around the tiny things that when the big things come around, you're already used to thinking differently about them, about what you can control and what you can't, about the inevitability of death and the preciousness of life, about the footprint you want to leave in the world and among other people, about how easily you can find happiness if you know how to look for it. There have been times in my life when I've struggled, big struggles and small struggles, but all of them felt heavy and overwhelming, shaping me first into an unhappy and anxious teenager, and then an adult who was worn down, negative and angry. I struggled so much with shyness and anxiety, worrying incessantly about how to exist and help those around me, but always paralyzed by fear and my own thoughts. I'd cross the road to avoid friends and not turn up to events because I'd been overthinking about what I'd said or what I could say. It cost me friendships, jobs, and opportunities. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and became a prisoner of my own limitations. Every self-help book I read at the time seemed to be written by someone brimming with confidence, who always had the answers, who never doubted their success, and seemed a million years from where I was. Then I discovered Stoicism. Or more specifically, my mom introduced me to Stoicism. She was a single mom raising 7 children by herself, and a nurse with short pink hair. She is still the strongest person I've ever known. I was working as a building site laborer at the time, commuting 4 hours a day for a small wage in a job I didn't love, for a boss I didn't get on with. I'd ask him to at least pay me minimum wage and he'd refuse, saying if I really wanted more money I'd work every weekend instead of just most of them. It felt like my life was slipping away, and every day I was feeling like my plans for the future and my ambition were being drained out of me. Then Mom gave me a book. I'd never been much of a reader before, but she pointed out I had all that time to kill on buses every day. So if it didn't make me travel sick, why not spend it reading? At the time a nurse, my mom had previously run a drug rehabilitation center. So many of her books were about recovery, addiction, and psychology, an unusual range to start a new reader on. But I slowly moved from one book to another, choosing things from her overflowing bookcase, and began to discover worlds I'd never dreamed of, voices I'd never imagined. I realized one day that I no longer saw those 4 hours as a waste of my life. but as a gift I was being given that other people might have been desperate for. A curse had been turned into a blessing. One day, when I was waiting in the early morning for my bus, a bin man came over and held a book out to me. I must have looked confused, so he explained that he always saw me reading there in the mornings and had spotted this book lying on top of a bin and kept it for me. He didn't say anything else, just accepted my thanks and went on his way. I didn't see him again, but that small gesture from a stranger shifted something in my head. Was it possible that people weren't always potential threats? Could it be true that most people wanted to do good things for others around them? Eventually, I came to Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. At first glance, it seemed an impossibly dense read for someone who'd barely opened a book a year before. A 2,000-year-old philosophical journal, originally written in ancient Greek. But as I began reading, it quickly became clear that the writing was fascinating and completely relevant to my life and the lives of those around me. I remember one passage I read, where Marcus Aurelius wrote of his goal to be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved and the raging of the sea falls still around it. I lived in such turbulence and uncertainty that the mental image of being still and certain in an unstable world made me stop completely and gave me a small hope that my future could look different to anything I'd imagined before. The more I read, the more I was surprised that this acclaimed historical figure, last of the great Roman emperors, was just a human like me, worried about his family, his temper, his confidence, his colleagues. He may have led wars and run an empire, but his main concern was how he could be the good man he wanted to be, finding a strength through kindness, fairness, and care for others. Stoicism seemed to, if not answer every question, then start me asking questions about how to live and die so the world can be better for us all. It spoke about honesty and connection, self-improvement and simplicity, choice, strength, and truth. I look back now at some of the ways I behaved, how I felt, how I would react to situations, and it feels like a different person. I would be paralyzed about going into shops, unable to speak to friends, would miss out on parties, would be silent at school. I was a shadow, anxious and terrified, often unable to do the simplest thing. But the Stoic philosophy made me think differently about everything, including my underpaid, overworked laboring job. I'd felt such a loyalty to my boss despite his behavior, perhaps because of fear of an unknown alternative. But Stoicism finally made me quit my job and start on the path to what I really wanted. My life changed then. Growing up, the 7 of us were raised by my mom on her own, and there were debt collectors banging on the door. We'd always escaped into films, watching not just the films themselves, but the behind-the-scenes extras about the filming and background work, following everything we could about how films were made. Now, I set up a business with my brothers, making films to help improve people's lives, with dreams that the 3 of us would take on Hollywood. Soon we had an office in our mom's attic, an area that was more of a crawl space full of Christmas decorations. It was also the bedroom of me and another brother, with bright pink fiberglass insulation bursting out of the rafters, and with no space to stand up even at the tallest point under the roof. We saved every penny from our laboring jobs to buy the computers to work on, and set up Mulligan Brothers, a media company with the sole purpose of inspiring change. We had multiple fans running in the summer, to try and keep the computers from overheating, and spent the winters working and sleeping up there in several layers of coats and gloves. But my brothers and I had our minds set on our plan. As we worked, I read everything I could about the Stoic philosophy, before gradually seeing it, month by month, day by day, bring me greater happiness and contentment. When the company was finally a success, we clubbed together to buy our mom her house in an attempt to thank her for everything she'd done for us. One of the most interesting things about Stoicism is the idea that it's about practical habits, simple aspects that can be built on day by day to create a virtuous circle. The more we access the ideas of Stoicism, the easier we find it to react in ways that leave us feeling good and make the rest of the world around us feel better too. Far too often we continue with the known difficulties in our lives, relationships that aren't right, jobs we are miserable in, friendships that bring us down, because we don't know if we can make the correct choices to steer our lives into a better situation. Sometimes we need to be forced into change to discover better lives. And if our lives haven't objectively improved, Stoicism offers the opportunity to discover and build resilience, optimism, perspective, wisdom, and joy. Doesn't that sound like it's worth a try? In summary, Stoicism is about building practical habits. Just starting it will bring new enjoyment to your life.